Right, we're live.
All right. I'm going to call to order the work session between the City of West Linn and the City of Oregon City, and I want to welcome everybody who is watching online, if you are watching online. And we're going to do a quick roll call. So, Mr. Wiley.
For Oregon City, Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Here.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Adam Marl.
Here.
And Commission President Denise McGriff.
Present.
For the City of West Linn, Councilor Todd Jones.
Can you hear me? Good evening, John Lewis, Public Works Director, watching from home.
Good evening, Dana Webb, City Engineer for the City of Oregon City.
I had come up with a rather novel idea of maybe, rather than having debates about it, because there's really no right or wrong at this point, because we don't really have all the information that we need to make those final decisions. And I thought maybe an idea would be to both jurisdictions just adopt both alignments into their TSPs with the proviso that it's on the probably very low threshold list of projects, and that as we move forward into the future, which may not include any of us, that it would be there, and if funding should become available, again, that's a big should, that we could then get into more of the meat, and maybe with the properties on both sides of our rivers, we would know more in the future. We just don't know everything we need to know right now. So I'm just going to use that as sort of the lead-in for our discussion, and see where this goes. So anybody that wants to just speak, Jules and I will, Mayor Walters and I will just recognize you, and we'll just go from there. Go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. So thank you for all the work that you've put in. And Councilor Relier here, City of West Linn. Reading through the pack of information provided in the agenda this evening, And then having sat through the various work sessions with the various engineers and the department managers on both sides of the house, if you will, listening to their concerns and the location, two locations currently selected that are potential points of placement of the bridge, and then reflecting upon the vision of the project. So it appears that the entity, if you will, that hired the consultant had a vision in mind that this was going to be a pedestrian and bicycle bridge that allowed traffic to move from West Linn or from Oregon City to the other city because the Abernathy Bridge does not currently have pedestrian or bicycle capability. So this is meant to take place, if you will, to facilitate that kind of transportation. And in the two locations that were chosen, one of the locations, which is, I believe, the upstream corridor, has a lot of aesthetic value to it. It's great because it's close to the waterfall, it's next to the new facilities that you guys are building along the waterfront. But as far as pedestrian traffic and bicycle traffic, I don't think it really meets the vision intent of creating transportation for the people that want to come over and connect to the buses and get involved with other public transit kind of facilities. So in my opinion, there would need to be a lot of roadway improvements on the Oregon City side as well as on the West Linn side for us to say, okay, we're okay with that upstream location. So with that in mind, my initial thoughts were I love the aesthetic value of being close to the waterfall. But if its purpose really is to provide transportation, then it's the downhill or the downstream corridor that appears to offer those kind of values. So I'd just like to throw that out as a talking point.
Mr. Smith?
Well, I'll counterbalance that because I feel that that's true if you're on the West Linn side of the river. Your TSP and your plan for Willamette Drive all centers at that place that allows that bridge to be useful. On our side of the river, it does not. So my concern on the downriver side is that it will be around the Singer Hill area, which is not somewhere that you can come down from the upper part of Oregon City to. So that means anyone from the upper part of Oregon City would be taking the elevator anyway, which will push them down to Main Street. The plan for what most of us believe in the future of the mill site is that there would be maybe a secondary elevator or access to the mill site from the bluff that would be a connection from the upper part of Oregon City to the lower part of Oregon City, which would, in terms of pedestrian and bicycle use, be much better for us on having that on the downstream, on the upstream side or upriver side. So I'm balancing that. I definitely see that the way that the plans are on the Westland side would kind of coalesce next to that place where it comes over. Right now, unless Oregon City does a lot of planning on our side, it's a bridge to nowhere. And that's a concern. I think, there's a lot of unanswered questions about what we're going to plan in that area and things like that. And that area of Oregon City, clearly on the north end of Main Street, will develop in a way that's a lot different than it is now, in which case the bridge crossing there might be useful. I think there's pluses and minuses, and we've kind of talked about all of those. And I think so I struggle with putting it in the TSP at all, but I also understand having both of them in there. I guess the statement that I made before about being concerned about having it in the TSP is that it's not funded. It's not something we as individual cities have as a priority. It was a ODOT priority because they neglected to meet their priority on the 205 bridge. And so it's been dropped in our lap. And I understand having it on our radar, but my worry is there's a lot of things on our radar that are not in the TSP. River taxis, having just general neighborhoods that have no plan to have basic sidewalks or crosswalks. And so if we ask our citizens in each city if they want a pedestrian bridge, the answer is yes. But if we compare that with the other needs that we have, the answer might not be yes. And so I think putting it in the TSP is a step to have it on our radar, but it also says, to me at least, as a citizen, we would say, this is something that is, takes precedent over things that, that I think also should be on our radar that aren't in the TSP. So I think that's my worry. I definitely don't, I'm definitely not against the concept of a pedestrian bridge. If ODOT built it tomorrow and paid for it, it'd be great. But that's not going to happen. And I think balancing that with the other conversations of the fact that they're going to, put this on our list of things to try to work on, and we're going to talk about the tolling and all of that and how we feel about that. What are they doing to help us? And that's a huge question. We're going to take this leap of putting a big major project that they have no funding for on our TSP, which basically shows that we're embracing it to some degree, but they're not listening in terms of our input on these other topics. And I think we have to be very careful with that.
I think one of the things we can ask our staffs is this project going to be put into the RTP, which is the Regional Transportation Plan, which would be for our region? I think that's sort of the $64,000 question, because it seems to me there's a hierarchy of plans, and we've got RTP, we've got R2 documents, and then, I forgot the county. Through the county in there, they've got their transportation plan, which does relate to our cities to some degree, and then we've got our transportation plan. So I think that would be a question that maybe, I don't know if John or Lance know the answer to that question. If we don't, we can get back to us. But I think, as I recall, Mr. Lewis saying many times, we have a lot of unfunded projects on the TSP right now. And I believe that the way that we have accommodated for that is that as funding becomes available, the plan gets revisited and these things then could move up. So I don't see this, as I said before, this being on a priority list of any sort. We've got other projects that we have got in line. It would be kind of down under that unfunded project list. And it could stay there from now until, whenever. Like I said, this issue may get resolved by electeds in the future. It won't necessarily be us. But we might be able to set the stage. But I don't disagree with you, Rocky, about the things that we need to do. For instance, as you said, I just went through one of the neighborhoods the day before yesterday, and I thought, oh, they don't have any sidewalks here. Okay, how are we going to do that without giving, telling people they have to form an LID to put sidewalks in their neighborhood?
Right, and so, part of it is having projects on our TSP that aren't funded. I don't have a problem with that. But we also have things that are not listed on our TSP at all.
Well, then we need to get them on there.
I think with the Frog Ferry and different river kind of transportation, that's not on our radar at all. So if we're saying a bridge that we have no funding for and no priority for is one of those things, then we need to think of all the other things. Because putting something on the TSP and leaving other things out that are in that same ballpark, I think shows a level at a different range. So I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I would support that.
It's one thing if we went out to our community as a city, each city did, and said, what is your top priorities right now of things that are not on the TSP? It's probably not going to be a pedestrian bridge across the river. It's probably going to be a lot of other things. We don't know that. We're just basing our information off of a survey and results that ODOT funded because they need to solve a problem that's their problem, not one that's ours. And so I think that's a different way, whole different thing.
Who else would like to weigh in?
Well, I was under the impression, and I could be wrong, that the multimodal portion of this I-205 project is satisfied by this pedestrian bridge in a way that they were not able to satisfy it with the original construction plans. Am I off base on that, Lance?
I think a lot of good points are being brought forward. I think that this is definitely a project that was spearheaded by ODOT as a means to help satisfy their multimodal needs for the I-205 corridor to meet the bike bill requirements of the state or as standards. That being said, I think they're also trying to sort of use an out clause that allows them to use the shoulders for that need, which is also, running up against issues with bus on shoulder. And so there's just a lot of need.
Because also transit's the other requirement.
Right, because transit's a priority too.
Yeah.
Right, and so I think there's a lot of that. I think the group is really focused in and found what I found to be a challenge at the staff level is not having great regional plans, particularly on projects that border communities like this kind of project. A lot of TSPs are internally focused, and obviously for obvious reasons, each city has their own unique needs and requirements, and so planning for something that's on the edge that almost seems more like a state or county or regional facility than a local community facility makes it even more challenging. So the way I look at it, and again, I defer to other staff and planners as well, and maybe Metro or somebody else would want to comment, but I see the inclusion of this and the TSP as something that the cities are just acknowledging that the work that's been input, there's nothing that says exactly what it's going to cost. There's nothing that says exactly where it will be located, but we're sort of acknowledging that this work is done and it's valid, and we recognize the effort. We recognize that there's a need for multimodal connections across the river, and these are two viable locations. And then,
Yeah, but I think that the hardest part with that is we don't then have the multimodal infrastructure on each side of the river to support that on the pedestrian bike
Right.
bridge. So to me, I'd love to see the money going there first, and I could throw that in everybody's TSP right now if we wanted to. And I think ODOT should be funding part of that,
which
if not all of it.
I think exactly gets to the point, right, of saying, okay, will we acknowledge this? I mean, we could even add clarifying statements in the TSP saying this is dependent on sources of funding outside of the communities themselves. I think a lot of our large capital projects really require outside funding sources to make them happen. So I think that's really where I see this project is really just more of an acknowledgement and a statement saying we recognize that it's part of the TSP, it's part of our planning effort. We know that we have more planning to do, and like you said, it's not going to be built tomorrow. I think the point well taken that maybe none of us are sitting here when
that happens.
Yeah, when that happens, but the planning is still valid, and I defer to others for any other comment.
John or Dana, do you want to weigh in on that?
Well, maybe I'll answer the first question. I don't believe this will be, can you hear me?
Sort of.
No, so I think where John was going to go, so if both jurisdictions adopted into the TSP, there is a proposal then to take it to Clackamas County to adopt it into the Clackamas County TSP, the RTP, the trails plan, and then potentially Oregon Highway plan through the state. So there would be additional plans that they would be then adopted into to help justify additional funding down the road.
Frank? Commissioner.
So I agree with both Councilman Relier and Commissioner Smith. From Councilor Relier's position is, what problem are we trying to solve? Or what amenity are we trying to provide? And what, if there is a problem, what is the magnitude of that problem? And I don't think that's ever been defined. I see it, it's never been a grassroots-driven project. It's been a top-down driven project from ODOT and the legislature. It's another unfunded project. It does not exist in a vacuum. As Rocky Smith just said, what other projects do we have that are more pressing, have a greater and more immediate rate of return to our citizens? I watched ODOT come before us. They're just dead set on this. They dismissed any other approach as not being cost effective, which I question that. I mean, there's a difference between a beautiful footbridge that stands independent and an addition to an existing bridge that's cantilevered beneath an existing bridge that's just basic conveyance of traffic. So they've dismissed any addition to the 205 bridge as not even cost effective, which I always question. The other question is timing. You know, how are each of our cities going to progress, and what is the maximum utilization of a landing point that'll benefit both cities? And that's a future condition that's not established today. So I just feel that this project is, when I look at the things we're dealing with, and I look at the 205 tolling and the information I've gleaned from that C4 subcommittee, and I look at our more immediate needs, this is, you know, maybe this thing is 10 years down the road. Do I object to having it on the radar? No, but do I want it to be a priority with the problem to be solved and funding to be procured? I don't see it, because, I mean, I just sat on the 205 project, and whether that's bonded or borrowed, I mean, the only source of revenue to support that is tolling. So my God, you know, let's try to provide for our more immediate needs and put out the hottest and closest fires first. And that's how I feel about it. Thanks.
Thank you. I think that this is a cool project. I don't feel that ODOT proposing it necessarily, and if we adopt it into our TSP, that we would necessarily be affirming ODOT if we do it carefully. And I think right now we're doing our due diligence process as each city to determine whether we think it's a good idea. I tend to think that it is, because I think there is a need for safe crossing of the river, and there's not many bridges that offer safe crossing of the river between Portland and us down here in Oregon City and West Linn for bicycles and pedestrians. And I also think with at least the City of West Linn's vision for our waterfront area, long-term vision, like Frank was talking, 10 years, 20 years, I think ours will probably be coming to fruition 10 to 20 or 30 years from now. So I'm fine adopting this into the TSP as a more of a longer-term project, just in case it opens up funding priorities. But I have to say that I've heard a lot from ODOT about, on their tolling conversations, about bringing us other modes of transportation so that you don't have to use your car. And this is a perfect example of something that would do that, so that people, and maybe additional citizens, would not have to pay the toll and could cross between our two cities to, you know, do their business, because I'm worried about having to pay a toll every time I want to go to Oregon City to recreate or go to a restaurant or whatever you do. So I would like to call on ODOT to fund this in some portion, because of the fact that they're going to be bringing tolling in, it looks like, and they're not, at the same time, they're talking about bringing alternative modes in, but they're not really doing that. They're expecting us as cities to take on that burden of bringing in bike lanes and public transit, stuff like that, but we're strapped for cash, because, so I suppose I'll support adopting. And in terms of the bridge, which placement works, I don't really know at this point, so I would agree with Commissioner McGriff and just adopting it in and leaving that to be determined down the line once funding sources are more realized than they are right now. So, thank you.
did you want to say anything, or go with Adam? Did you want to go? Yeah, I'm going to.
Okay. Thank you. So I have a question, either for Dana or maybe John. So when I was looking and reviewing the concept plan the other day, and looking at when the final decision on the placement will be made. So I'm looking at page 31, and it says, step 4, identify and select a preferred alignment. Based on additional analysis of the benefits, burdens, and unknowns, and the completion of the respective environmental review, the project team will select the preferred alignment for a pedestrian bicycle bridge crossing between Oregon City and West Linn. And so my question is, when it says the project team will select, are they referring to the project leadership team, which of the elected officials only includes Councilor Baumgartner and Commissioner McGriff? Are they referring to the project advisory committee, or are they referring to the project management team, which is basically just a bunch of ODOT people and their consultants?
My understanding that it was going to go to the leadership team.
I think it demands a definitive answer. It's not something we should guess at.
No, I'm just saying that was my understanding. But again, I may be wrong.
Because, well, and if Dana or John, do you have any
Dana's
insight?
the one that's been closest to it.
Can you guys hear me okay?
No, you need to get closer to your speaker.
Let's see. I've got my microphone on full. If you aren't able to hear me, maybe I can. So for the next steps, we did not determine a final corridor alignment. We left it open because we didn't have funding and time to continue to evaluate. So we kind of have this list of things we need to continue to work on. The next step would be identifying an additional funding source to work through those issues that we've laid out as things we need to continue to refine. And so the team that would make that decision would be, the team that would be created when we find an additional funding source. So the concept plan today would be just to adopt those two corridors.
Okay, so we don't know who, if any, of the elected officials from both cities would be involved in the final decision-making of the corridor.
In reality, it should be the jurisdictions make that decision. Wouldn't you think?
And it would, so we would, if it was 10 years from now before we found more money to continue to review this, we'd create new, staff groups and elected official groups. And if the, refinement plan picked one alignment, then we'd come back to both elected bodies to amend the TSPs to include just that alignment.
Okay.
Well, I think your summary is correct, though. At this point, we don't know, right?
Yeah.
And that's what gives me pause, is that I don't have any opposition to putting the idea of putting it in the TSP and saying it's not a priority, but this is something on the list that future commissions and councils can look at. But when I'm reading through this and I'm not getting specifics as to where the final placement will be, that makes me nervous. And the fact that there are two proposed corridors for us right now to put it in the TSP, that we're just guessing from right here as to what future decisions will be made. And so I understand that there are pros and cons to both, and I hear both of them. I don't have any comment on the validity of either of them right now. My concern is just that by including this in the concept, or in the TSP, this concept plan has two different options that, we're just kind of, leaving this up to things that we don't know.
Well, we're leaving it up to somebody in the future when they have more information, I think. So, Todd, you ready to jump in? Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Barely.
Then you're going to have to see my face real close.
It looks okay to us, so.
Okay, yeah, you're going to see all my freckles now. Good evening. do I understand correctly from the things that have been shared with us that ODOT needs this to satisfy some multimodal transportation requirements in order for them to proceed with their work on I-205?
So Dana, do you want to take that?
So I can't speak specifically for ODOT, but my understanding is that they have determined that the multimodal component of the 205 project was more than the project could financially hold. So they've got sort of a legal opinion. So I do not believe that it's part of that. I do believe they want to provide a multimodal component, and that's what this work was intended to help support.
Dana or anyone, would it be problematic for ODOT if we did not put these in our respective transportation plans?
Did everybody hear that? I mean, Mr. Jones basically said it's an oversight by ODOT, and they're trying to correct a problem that they created.
His question for the record was whether, feedback,
Maybe a little further away.
excuse me, whether if it would cause a problem if we did not put this in our TSPs for ODOT.
Yeah, you can keep it kind of up like that. You don't have to have it quite so close. And then it still works. Go ahead, Mary.
Well, I don't actually have an answer to that question, but as far as this concept...
Well, I wanted to stay with my line of reasoning before we leave. I wasn't done.
Counselor Jones is still...
I know. Counselor Jones, we can
Sorry.
barely hear you. Sorry.
Okay, my question, can you hear me right now?
Jake,
Yes.
can we have people call in?
Yeah, they could call in. They just have to be sure to mute their microphones on their computers.
Oh, in the past, we'd be able to hear them better if they called in than trying to do this.
We can work on that.
What's the phone number?
He wants to know what the phone number is.
So I'd have to call you, in fact. So if you're able to send me a quick email with your phone number.
I'm putting it in the chat.
I think we have chat deactivated.
I don't think we have chat. Do we have chat?
Your email.
That's jwiley@orcity.org.
I was going to say, you have his number, right? You could just give it to Jacob. Just walk over there.
All right, Mary, my apologies. I'll try to call in. I'll come back to my question later.
Jacob, I have his cell number. I can just...
Yeah, just walk over there.
Todd, I'm going to show Jacob your cell phone number, and he'll call you. Maybe that'll work better.
Okay, so we're going to hear from Counselor Baumgartner.
Thank you. So what I was starting to say was that although I do like the concept of having multimodal a crossing between the two cities, it just feels like it's disconnected. Other people have made that point. So I guess I'm not against putting it in a plan. Technical difficulties.
Yes.
To put it in a plan if it doesn't supersede other projects. But it seems disconnected. It seems like an afterthought or kind of an orphan project almost. And I'm not sure what would happen if one city adopts and the other doesn't. I'm curious about that.
It won't happen then.
But I also have a concern from the meetings that Mayor McGriff and I have been attending. I had a sense that the tribal coalition members who were present were not wanting the connection closer to the falls.
Right, yeah.
And so I would like to definitely find out what the tribal coalition members would want for this bridge and before we made any adoption or decision. So we maybe can't do that tonight.
No.
Find out, but
Yeah.
that's one consideration that's concerning me.
Well, I will say that what I recall from talking with the Grand Ron is that they liked the upstream, but they had concerns about it landing on Moore's Island because there was some concern about it being archaeologically significant, and that had not been investigated. So, Rory, you could just put it back. You don't need to have it quite that close. There you go. Yeah, you'll still be able to be heard. It's just you'll get a lot of feedback if it's super, super close to you.
Thank
So
you.
that is what, and I discussed that specifically with the chief of staff.
Well, those were just some of the thoughts that I've been having. Thank you.
Councillor Jones, are we ready to get back to you? Nope.
Try calling
Okay,
him.
he's calling now. He's got it.
He's calling you on your on your city phone. Do you have your city phone? Oh.
So what number are we calling?
We're calling his work cell phone.
He said neither one of them is ringing.
Hello?
Oh,
Yay!
all right, do we have you?
We heard you then.
Hello?
Hi, we can hear you.
Yay! Is there a delay? Todd, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I literally had my other phone ringing at the same time, and it was someone else. Okay, my apologies for that asshole. Here's my question earlier was, is it important to ODOT that this bridge be in our transportation plans? And is it problematic for them if it is not?
It's a great question.
Yeah, I don't think we know the answer to that.
Oh, I think we do. I think we do know the answer to that.
Dana was basically saying, she was taking the high road with that, so.
Well, I'll say that I think we do know the answer to that, and I don't have a problem giving ODOT a problem.
Okay.
I will say this, though, and I do agree that it's cool. I also do agree that I don't mind putting it in a plan, but there's a whole lot of other things I don't mind putting in a plan.
Well, when we do that, can we get our list?
So my point is this, and this is what I spoke about before. We have a grassroots effort being made, which I'm still surprised that we don't have a representative from each of our communities on it. I don't know if West Linn does. I know Oregon City doesn't. But having some representative on the coalition for the Frog Ferry. This plan is a river taxi plan between Vancouver and Oregon City up to 9 stops. To me, that's cool. And to me, my point is, why wouldn't that be something that we would want in our TSP plan?
Well, let's do it.
Compared to this bridge thing, which this is completely grassroots. So my point is, if we say this bridge project is in our TSP, that's taking a higher level than other things that should be also on our radar that have maybe even have made more progress than this bridge. I don't know how to weigh that. The second we put it on a plan, it takes a precedence over other things that we haven't.
Not if it's on the not unfunded list. So I agree we should add the Frog Ferry. So if and when we do amend the TSP, let's add that and the other projects that we feel are important. I don't have any objection to doing that. We should do that. We were working on the Frog Ferry when I was working at PDC.
Right.
And it was going to go between the east and west sides of the river. I didn't know about the Vancouver part, but.
I think Joe still has the floor.
All right, go ahead. Go, Todd.
Thank you. I think you all know where I was going with my question. I personally right now am somewhat indifferent about putting this in West Linn's transportation plan. Part of me says, no harm in doing it, why not? Another part says, it didn't come from us. It's not a priority for us. We see no reasonable way that we're going to finance it anytime soon. But I wonder if it's a potential bargaining chip with us in our work with ODOT in the months to come, if it's important to them. So I just wanted to go ahead and state the obvious.
Thank you very much for that.
Probably was until they see this video.
Yeah, so there weren't going to be any decisions made, and I'm looking at the time, and we have exceeded our 30 minutes for this particular part of the discussion, and I think we are at least all on the same page with regard to we know what we don't know, and we're not ready to do any adoptions or even suggest we do any adoptions at this point in time. We've got about 3 questions that I wrote down that we need to have some answers for, and we can work with our staffs to talk to ODOT and get those.
Excellent.
Did you want to close as well?
No, I think that's right on. Yeah. Lance, does that make sense to you and Jerry? Excellent.
John, are you okay with that as well? Did you hear? He's nodding.
Chair, one parting
Sure.
thought. So as the parties here at the table and online have discussed, this appears to be a top-down, ODOT-driven project. Yes. And they're saying, if you put it in your TSP plan, we'll go out and shop for the funds to be able to put this in. So my question is, if we don't put it in our TSP, are they going to continue to go shopping for the funds and bid the project and put it in anyway?
They can't, as far as I'm aware, Mr. Conkle, they can't force us to put anything in our TSPs. Yep.
No, but they could put it in the regional transportation plan or some other plan and say, we gave the cities an opportunity to work with us on it and they chose not to.
Well, that's always an option.
I think the question was clearly stated. Are they going to proceed in the absence of our endorsement? And the answer is probably yes, because that's what they've demonstrated on every other project.
We don't really know the answer to that question.
Lance, did you have a comment?
I was just going to make a quick comment that maybe a preamble or something to the draft, whatever gets adopted, that sort of summarizes some of these key talking points would be very helpful. I remember being here when we first come up, sort of as staff came up with this concept. The one thing that resonates in my mind from those days was that there was sort of a uniform objection to a bike ped installation on I-205 that was similar in nature to what we see on I-205 crossing into Vancouver. I don't think anybody wanted, I think a lot of people don't see that as a viable facility. The bridge across the Columbia River, if you've ever been on that bike facility, you know that it's not a place where you take your 6-year-old bike riding, right? And so I think the thought was at the time that, you know, we have to meet all these different agencies have to meet these different needs with limited funds. So how do we do that and avoid that kind of outcome? And so I think at the onset, it was this notion that we would use Borland and Willamette Falls Drive and parts of downtown Oregon City and parts of Gladstone to sort of form this chain of regional bike ped connectivity that would connect to the improvements that exist to the north on I-205 when you get to 82nd and Gladstone and those areas, and be able to make a regional connection. I don't know if we've had the best success with that on this particular project and sort of stating that this is the purpose, that we're all trying to work together to a common outcome that's good and good for everybody. And, it gets really broken down into who's paying for it and who's driving for it, and those are all very valid topics. But I do know, just in my own personal history, that, our goal, whether it's ODOT staff or city staff, is good outcomes for the communities and for the region that are good investments that have good, significance and not something that's just stuck on a bridge somewhere that nobody ever wants to be on. And so I think
I'm going to close it. We're not here to make any decisions, but we have some ideas of how each jurisdiction feels, and we can either not move forward with anything, or we can create a preamble, as you said, but let's get to item number 2, which shouldn't take too much time.
I just want to say in closing, I thought Mr. Jones's observations were pertinent.
Absolutely.
And I mean, if you choose to put this on a plan, then you do elevate it. You do give it a status that other projects may not enjoy. So I thank him for that input. Thank you, sir.
Even if it's unfunded. Okay, so we are all aware that the year 2022 is the anniversary of the 100th year of the Arch Bridge. And back in the day, it was dedicated in December, matter of fact, December 28th, 1922. Now, I don't know why they continue to have these dedications in December, because our weather isn't super great in December, but they had it nevertheless. So we are not planning our celebration in December.
Good call.
But we have a group of city citizens, electeds, who are meeting on a regular basis to talk about this party that we would like to have, something akin to what we did in 2012 when we reopened the bridge. And Commissioner Smith and I right now have by default been co-chairing the meetings, but we have participation from Councilor Jones, and Councilor Baumgartner has attended, and I'm happy to say that the two main stalwarts and ramrods for this project are our logistics team, which includes Tony Conkle and John Williams, which is very exciting because obviously they know how to get things done. And other than that, we have our next meeting is coming up on June the 9th, and we are down to finalizing some things. I hope that by the next meeting, we'll see the possible logo that Kristen and Danielle and a few others have been working on. And Tony, do you want to give us any quick update on the past logistics? I forgot to bring my notes from the meeting that we just got from Kristen in the email today, and I did not bring it with me, so.
I think as part of, we were able to break up into 5 kind of task force groups that looked at anything from logistics to entertainment to
historical
interpretation. So, you know, they were able to go back and in their working groups, come back with ideas that the whole group then kind of worked through. And so we had a pretty long list that we started with of potential ideas. Right now, it seems to be coalescing around an early morning, like a 5K type walk-run event. The bridge is closed from 6, 7 a.m. to 3, 4 p.m., somewhere in there. There'll be some ceremonies on the bridge, including both jurisdictions and the Confederate Tribes of the Grand Ronde, music on both sides, food carts. So each of those groups were bringing back potential costs associated with that for bands setting up, you know, anything we're going to be giving out. So we're hoping in our next meeting to be able to get all those costs understood. And if we have to start making some decisions on what we're going to invest in, what we're not going to invest in. And then really working with ODOT and West Linn, Oregon City, you know, street closures, barricades, all the other good stuff that goes along with putting an event on. But
yeah.
It seems like we're making progress.
Yeah, we are. Our theme, in case you don't know what it is celebrating our connections, which we thought would be kind of a great idea since we have that connection with each other. I will say, much to the chagrin maybe of Mr. Smith and Mr. Jones, we're not going to have any football rivalry things going on at the part of the celebration. Not that day. That's for another day. So we will just, we're not all showing up in red and black and green and yellow. So that's we're going to keep that part of the rivalry out of this particular celebration at this particular time. But the basic, as Tony was saying, the basic format that we've looked at is we'd have opening, welcoming remarks by the jurisdictions, then a blessing by the Grand Ronde, then we'd have a little music, then we'd have a little bit of a program, then we'd have another bit of music, utilizing hopefully some of our youth and maybe from Oregon City and West Linn, whatever songs we were thinking about. We then would have some history again about the bridge. There's also a proposal for a paint by number art project that would be on the bridge. So there would be 3 panels. One would be completed by the Grand Ron, and the other 2 would be the 2 cities, and citizens can come up with their, I don't know what medium we're using, but let's say they're going to use their crayons, and they can color in whatever the design is, and that's got a project. So that would be going on during the whole time of the event. The one sort of bugaboo that I'm having a hard time with is that we wanted to try to get some old cars, and I made a contact with, there's going to be a car show at Clackamas Park in July, and I made a contact with those folks. Nobody has any cars that date from the 1920s. I said 20 to 30, and they don't have any, but they were going to put me in touch with some other people that they know, plus Bob Hadlow from ODOT may be a contact. So that has been sort of a loose end that I haven't been able to connect with. You know, it's like you can't just drive down the street and every time you see somebody with an old car, you know, just chase after them and find out. Do you have an old car you want to have in your parade? So, and I've reached out to the car show people too. So again, they were very specific. They wanted the cars within that particular time frame. If I could somehow convince them to get rid of that time frame, then we probably have all the old-timey cars that we want to have. But they said, well, 20 to 30. So that's where I'm struggling a little bit with that.
I don't know if Councilor Relier, do you have any thoughts or connections on that vintage? I know you're
vintage cars.
Avid car connoisseur.
Well, my cars are from the 30s and the 40s. They're Jaguars. Jaguar didn't really build cars in the 1920s.
I know that.
So 1934, I think, is their first year car. I have a 38. But I have plenty of folks in car clubs that I could reach out to if you're looking for something in particular, like an old Packard or.
We don't even care about the model. They just worried about they were worried about the years. So that was kind of authentic. We're trying to get historical representation.
Okay, yeah, let me check into it and I'll see what I can come up with. And how many cars are we looking for?
Well, do you remember how many we had last time? Were there 4 or 5 that came across the bridge at the end? That's what I'm recalling.
I don't remember. 10 maybe.
I don't think there were 10, but.
No, it was a small number.
It was a small number, whatever we can manage.
Okay.
Then the other thing I wanted to mention is that we also, in 1922, we had a couple that got married on the bridge. I can't remember if he was from West Linn or she was from Oregon City, but anyway, it was Oregon City and West Linn joining together in holy matrimony. And we have at least 2 couples that I am aware of that would like to renew their vows on the bridge. So if you know of anybody that wants to get married on the bridge, let us know. I've asked Kristen and Danielle to put the word out in our respective city newsletters to say, if you want to get married on the bridge, this would be an opportunity for you to get married on the bridge. So, yeah, well, it might save money, I don't know. So anyway, we'd like to do that.
I'll fly my daughter out from Texas.
Whatever works. So that was one of the things.
Adam stepping up.
Are you ready to propose?
That's not why I'm raising my hand. So, did I hear that there were conversations between the 2 high school bands for music?
No, not necessarily the bands, but there is a subcommittee that's dealing with music, and Counselor Jones is on one of those, on that committee, along with Ray Gordon and what's the gentleman's name that has the youth music project in there in West Linn? Do you have some connections with? Of course, you were in band, of course.
I was a band kid, and so I think it would be very cool if the West Linn High School and the Oregon City High School band were able to do something together. Just throwing that idea out there. And then I just have a question. Will there be pyrotechnics at this?
No.
Okay.
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
We've also had a request by somebody to light the bridge, and I said that is not going to happen between now and October the 1st, I'm sorry. But I put them in touch with the Willamette Light Brigade, which does the other bridges down the road. And I said, that is another project, not part of this project. So then last but not least, just before the very end, there will be the exchange of gifts. So Oregon City is planning to, so you don't know what it is, but we are planning to give you a gift, and somebody on your side is, the river is working on whatever that gift is, and I don't know if they're involved, the council. And then we have to somehow come together with, matter of fact, I asked Kristen, I said, we need to get a meeting together with myself and Lori and Danielle to figure out, we'd like to give a gift to the Grand Ron. So if you have any ideas, we are totally welcome, open to ideas, and if you want to be a part of that conversation, please let me know and we will do that. So Commissioner Smith, did we cover everything in your recollection? Mr. Jones is going to say something here in a minute.
Just that our next meeting is June 9th.
Yes.
6 o'clock.
Yeah. Mr. Jones. Do you have to call him again, or is he still on the line?
No, I'll have to call him.
Oh, did you hang up? Don't hang up.
I was just going to say, it was my husband that, for some reason,
Volunteered you?
nominated me to renew my vows, and I love him very much. But if there's somebody else interested, you can pull the Walters from the list. We can renew our vows another time.
Adam might still man up. We'll see.
Go right ahead, anytime.
Hi, Brent. Is it Rocky that's the teacher in Oregon City?
Yes.
Yes, he is.
Okay, Rocky, I'm going to plant this seed with you right now.
Okay.
What if we go to our respective AP art teachers? Because the AP art students have to put together a portfolio, and most kids will start this summer. What if we put a challenge to AP art studio students that they need to come up with a concept for a originally created gift that their city would give to the other city?
Okay.
Design it, create it. Food for thought.
I'll ask about it. I'm an art teacher, by the way.
Oh, that's you? Okay.
Okay.
Well, it can be more than one gift. We have a, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but there is something in the offing that is getting itself put together for you all. But the more the merrier.
And just to get back to the question about music, to clarify, we are in fact talking about having bands or at least ensembles from each of the high schools perform, but it's not being described as a competition, simply performance.
Right.
I hope it's not going to be a competition. Okay, that's awesome. So any other questions? Anybody else here that's sitting here want to be involved in this? Everybody's looking down at their shoelaces. That's okay.
I think it's exciting, especially for the youngest kids, because they will remember this throughout their lives, you know?
Oh, Rocky, talk about the program idea real quick.
So we have, I was able to find online the original program, an original program from the bridge opening. So we're talking about doing a reproduction of that. And then there's another possible book that might be put together as a collector thing too, so.
Nice.
So anyway, so that's, yes, it is. All right, so our third topic and favorite topic for the night is the I-205 construction and tolling discussion. And I would like, if possible, Commissioner O'Donnell, would you like to lead off with the latest information that you gleaned from the C4 meeting?
No, I really don't.
Okay, well, you don't have to. I'm just giving you the opportunity. You do not have to.
Well, you know, it's short to the point. I mean, I sat in that C4 subcommittee and I listened to the presentations, and I mean, the key item to me, once again, is it's an unfunded project. Whether you bond or borrow, there's only one source of a financial vehicle to support those two approaches, and that's tolling. And, you know, I probably feel like many of you, it's like some people don't listen because they feel they don't have to. And I just feel, I mean, I was listening to our friends who came over here from West Linn, and their concerns about failed intersections already and getting across from 43. I mean, there's no, I don't see any resolution. I don't see any solutions forthcoming, just all ahead full. So, I mean, that's the brief summary of a very difficult situation that's going to impact our cities mightily if they proceed without an effort to do something about, and I don't know how you succeed in a traffic diversion solution. There's so many, there's just limited solutions and possibly none. So that's that's basically, the only point that was of interest in that whole conversation,
Be ready, Commissioner.
assuming that we get this force fed to us, a parallel conversation was about the crossing into Washington and about tolling on that and providing relief to those residents that live in those areas that had to use it. So I don't want to provide I hate to go to a fallback position, but my God, the impact on our citizens who would have to pay tolls for their daily commutes. You know, it's a regressive tax. It impacts the lowest incomes among us, the mightiest. And on the interstate crossing, they're talking about providing relief to those people that would have to use it. So I'm not advocating for accepting that outcome as far as tolling, but it's just, I don't know, we've sat here so many times and I just feel like nobody listens. So I'm sorry to give you such a review, but that's how I feel about it.
Who is, Mayor Walters, who is your representative on C4? Is it you?
I am.
And you're our representative?
I am now, yes.
Yeah, and I'm just on the subcommittee, and you know, nobody objects if you build a new lane and you want to toll a lane. They object to paying for roads they've already paid for. So
go ahead, Commissioner Mara or Mayor Walters.
Go ahead.
Whichever.
Go ahead.
So I don't have too much to add. So yeah, Commissioner O'Donnell is on the C4 Metro Subcommittee. I am now the representative on C4, and then I also sit on the Tolling Diversion Subcommittee with Mayor Walters. So there are many committees on this, and not much new information has been given. I think many of us can recite the presentation they give to us by heart by now, because it doesn't seem like they're giving us very new information. And what I've been pushing is they've told us repeatedly we've done an economic impact study, and I've just continually been asking where that is, and they've been slow to get that information out. So that's just been frustrating. So apart from that, I don't have any updates, and so I'd be interested to hear what Mayor Walters says. And is anyone sitting up here today on MPAC?
I am.
I'm an alternate.
Because I know that they had that meeting a while ago with the voting to amend the RTP, and that was a very interesting meeting to watch. I know many of us were communicating back and forth with each other while we were watching it, and so I'm still a little unclear as to what that vote was.
I watched it and I was not clear either. And I was, and Mayor Lyle Smith was our representative at the time, so I'm watching it after the fact, trying to catch up. And I was like, they got to the end of it, and I'm like, well, what happened? I don't know what happened.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to that, except that in my opinion, I feel like, well, first of all, like you say, we haven't really seen any answers or solutions for the diversion problem, which is already a problem and will be worse, which is very frustrating. But also, I would really like to see some of this tolling funding going to the local roads. Like, if they're going to toll here, some of the money should stay here, because our roads are going to be directly negatively impacted, and we're going to have to be doing repairs to those roads, even though they're owned by ODOT. And in our surrounding.
They're not owned by ODOT.
Well, 43 is owned by ODOT.
Right, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And also,
McLaughlin is
you've got 99, and then we've got our county roads. So that money some of that money should be staying here, and that's just not part of the omnibus plan at the moment. So those are the two things that I just keep advocating for at this point. Tolling is codified law, and has been that since 2017. So it's coming. And so we need to be working as hard as we can to mitigate the negative impacts to both of our cities and our surrounding neighbors.
Mr. Jones, I'm just going to go down the line here. You have anything you'd like to add with regard to that? Nope. Bill?
So my thoughts on that is that the way the legislation is written, Both Oregon City and West Linn have an opportunity to petition the state for some of the funds from the tolling to make improvements on Highway 99 in Oregon City and Highway 43 in West Linn. So we need to initiate that action as they move forward with the tolling.
Yeah, we met with our city attorneys, and we're looking at some of that language to see if that is, can be a plan. And maybe at that point, maybe the two cities can have a joint executive session to go over some of that, and maybe join forces in that type of legal action if there is something there.
Rory?
Thank you. I don't have anything to add on what we've talked about, but I have an additional thought on this topic of tolling diversion. I was preparing testimony for MPAC a while back, doing some research, and I found that the studies that ODOT have done so far are from the year 2045, when they're projecting diversion impacts for their language that they're talking to us about diversion, and the results are not good. They find that they studied several local traffic intersections. They found that 6 local intersections improve, 14 do not meet standards in the future. If we do nothing, they fail, and 3 require mitigation strategies. So the line between which ones require mitigation and which ones are failing but don't require mitigation as a result of the project are blurred. But I was thinking maybe if our two cities came together and pushed for some more relevant projections and data on diversion impacts, I think that would be really helpful and important, like for 2028 or 2030, because projecting 25 years in advance doesn't tell us the impact on our business community and our local roads in 2028 or 2029 or whenever they actually start doing this. So that's really what's concerning to me, is that it could be that they're thinking, okay, well, it's going to be really bad for 5 years, 10 years, and then eventually they'll get used to it like they have in other communities. And I'm concerned about that. So I think I'd like to see us all push for some more relevant, recent projections on the impact in a few years when tolling starts rather than 20 years down the line. So I just wanted to highlight that.
What do they think the
component.
other communities are that are going to be? I mean, we don't have tolling in Oregon, so are they using California or Texas or New York or New Jersey where they do have tolls?
I love the Seattle comparison.
They're using Seattle?
Seattle 405 has tolls.
Yeah.
Even though the diversion opportunities are in no way applicable.
No, but yeah, they're not. Yeah, I was going to say, how could they be applicable to what we have? I mean, to me, it's completely ludicrous.
Well, and Councilor Baumgartner can tell you, and as well as Commissioner O'Donnell, on the diversion, our last diversion meeting, ODOT turned to us and said, well, what solutions do you have? And I thought, oh my goodness, like here we are, a year and such into this, and at least, and they're looking for solutions from us now. And I think everybody on that call expressed a little bit of their frustration. Yeah.
Well, I agree with our West Linn counterparts. I don't care about something that's 30, 40 years in the future. I'd like to see current state and near future state, because you can't tell me that 43 where it enters the bridge is not a failed intersection. I'd like to see the numbers on those intersections, and I don't want to play games where, oh, it's at 0.99 and 1.0 is a failed intersection, therefore it's not failed. And I really question, at what point do we take action about the economic harm to both our citizens and our business communities that this is going to bestow upon us as this progresses? I'm feeling pretty militant about it. I don't know if we could succeed in that, but I'm just tired of listening to a same old song with no solutions, and you never hear a solution, possibly because there are none.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, I've been experiencing acute frustration in all of the meetings, and I listen to the framing of equity used a lot, and I find it very difficult to reconcile the fact of the matter, which is that those who can afford flexibility the least and afford the financial burden the least will ultimately be the most impacted. Even if there's a program that they can sign up for, that's just another burden on people, and how many people won't sign up for it for various reasons, and just the other impacts of business traffic, people who are making a living just barely, doing gig work, Grubhub drivers, Uber drivers. There was a ambulance service representative at a recent meeting, and I'm not sure, maybe there is some mitigation to impacts to these people that's in the plan. I haven't heard it. I have a very significant concern about the timing. The first person I heard mention the timing of this rollout was County Commissioner Paul Savas, and his suggestion is that we push for ODOT to implement the tolling concurrently with other regional tolling, because one of the biggest significant impacts is going to be the timing of this tolling happening on this corridor when there is no other tolling, as you've stated, in the state of Oregon. And I personally see a really significant resistance, specifically in Clackamas County, to this tax on driving on the roadway, and people will just avoid the corridor altogether. And how will the businesses survive if people are just avoiding the corridor altogether? And never mind the diversion traffic, which is going to overburden the surface roads. I could just go on, obviously, so I'm not going to, but those are a few of my thoughts.
Well, I don't disagree with anything that has been said. However, I think I'm leaning towards Commissioner O'Donnell in the fact that I'm feeling quite a bit resistant. And it kind of reminds me of the days back when we were protesting things and still are protesting things. I don't think we should take this lying down at all. And I don't think that we should be having this foisted upon our county or our jurisdiction. I go back to the letter that was signed by all the mayors in our region asking ODOT. I think it was, John may be able to tell me, it was or Lance, it was probably a 7 or 8 page letter that was sent to ODOT saying, you have not addressed any of these questions. And I think some of those questions are still hanging out there that they have not answered. And I really think that all of the jurisdictions that signed that letter, as particularly our 2 jurisdictions, we need to push back. We cannot accept this if it's the only place that they're going to do it. I'm not thrilled personally about tolling. I mean, I think Mary and Rory know probably how many times a day I'm back and forth between here and West Linn. I might as well just get a separate bank account to accommodate that, because I'm back and forth daily, many times a day. And maybe I have the ability to pay, but maybe I don't have the ability to pay. It just, to me, it seemed like an idea that was created without thinking about what the unintended consequences are. And the unintended consequences, in my mind, cause the economic decline of both of our communities. And I cannot see any way around that, no matter how I try to spin this. And I just don't think we should take this lying down. We can't. We owe it to our communities, and we know we have the other regional partners behind us, at least the other cities that signed that letter. So I don't think there's any good answer to this. I know there's legislation, but I know there's a group of people out there trying to get a petition to get this on some ballot. I've not seen it, but I'm aware that that's going on. It's just problematic all around. To me, it plays into the worst fears of people who say, oh, we don't want to Portlandize Clackamas County, or we don't want to do this or that. Well, we've been trying to be reasonable with people to say, no, we're charting our own path. But this is not allowing us to do that. So I don't really know if there's anything more that we can say other than to continue to ask the questions and push back. We just can't allow this to happen.
Agreed.
Thank you. Would it be possible because I know we've had joint work sessions like this before. This is our first in-person one, and already the dynamic is so much better being able to sit up here with everyone. Would it be possible for us to get another one of these meetings scheduled with ODOT's people in person, so they can tell us directly to their faces how they intend to screw over our communities, and we can speak to them as well as to what our concerns are as a group.
If that's the consensus of this group, we'll put our schedulers on the job and try to find a date for a meeting. But does anybody have any objection to that?
No.
Todd? Todd's going. Just don't hang your phone up.
You're on.
Just leave it on.
Hello.
Speak.
I appreciate you saying that. It gives me a horrible echo.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, put it on mute. Put it on mute.
You can mute your computer and just listen through your phone.
Did you hear
I
that?
appreciate the idea that somebody just suggested.
Yeah, he's still on mute on his computer. Okay, go ahead.
I can hear you fine, thanks. If we're going to call ODOT to the carpet, should it be only our two cities or should we involve more?
I'm fine with more, but I think our two cities are those that are the major impacted of it all. And I really question at what point in time do we escalate our response? I mean, do you at some point take a legal action that says, that states the harm you're doing to our cities?
But we'll need some documentation about that as well, but
Well, we have traffic engineers.
I would say at this point, we should probably follow the lead of exhausting all of our administrative remedies first before we think about any action that might involve legal. That way we can show that we have taken all these steps, we've done these certain things, and that's just basic.
Well, that's one approach, and as you continue on that approach, the clock keeps running.
I understand.
I've got no problem rattling the saber a little bit, saying, keep pushing us, and you will find us in court for the undue economic harm you're doing to our business and our citizens. So, like I said, I'm militant about this. I'm done listening to the same old song that answers no questions.
Well, they are statutorily, they have the right.
I understand that, but we also have, you have to protect your businesses and your citizenry from an undue burden, and I'm willing to let a court make that decision if it goes that direction. And I understand the rights they have, but the exercise of those rights without considering the impact to specific communities is government at its worst.
But we should probably loop in our state representatives. I don't know how they voted on this particular bill that went through, but
Well, it was 2017, so our current representative was not there.
Yeah, was not there.
Yeah.
And I'm trying,
I think Mark Meek.
He was there.
Mark was still there?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, do we have any good of the order business? I think we kind of have a consensus that we might, you're talking about basically having a come to Jesus meeting with ODOT.
We can have it on I-205 and see how they like that.
Oh, okay, that's an idea. Maybe we could do some diversion.
I don't know if I'm ready for that, but Councilor Jones, I think he still has some questions.
Go ahead, Councilor Jones.
Thank you, friends. I appreciate the suggestion. The only thing that I'm going to put out there is that if we're going to invite ODOT to come be with us,
and beat 'em up,
it needs to be something more than a frustration session.
I agree.
That we've got to have concrete things that we're asking them for that they can respond to, or I think it could potentially backfire on us.
Right, because it would turn into, excuse my French, a bitch session, which we don't.
Yeah.
We don't really want to do that.
And that's not going to do us any good.
No, it isn't.
Well, maybe there's some data gathering we need to do. Intersections, failed intersections, or conduct our own poll about the, people that say, I'm no longer going to come to Oregon City if it's told. I mean, we have to have specific ammunition to speak from, not just our gut feeling or
That's
our
why
personal.
we're waiting on this fabulous economic study that they.
Well, and I think we need to consider too, we've just redone our historic Main Street. You guys did before we did. That was a significant investment.
Yeah.
And those are going to be the two most impacted places by this tolling.
Exactly.
And that's extremely frustrating.
Yeah, by 2045, was it 2045, you said, the cars will be so backed up, we can use them as a pedestrian access across the river, because we can just walk on top of them to get there, because nobody will be able to go anywhere.
Right.
I know, that sounds basically facetious, but, in my mind, I'm thinking, oh yeah, everybody will be in gridlock. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, but I think Counselor Jones had his hand up
Go ahead.
before me, so I'll let him go first.
Just go ahead and just jump in anytime you're ready.
Thank you, Prince. When I mentioned concrete specific things, keep in mind, depending on what we have on that list, we might be communicating to them that we're acquiescing and throwing in the towel and tolling. So let's just keep that in mind as we build that list. But specifically, some of the things that immediately come to mind for the West Linn at least, because I don't know Oregon City well enough. But one would be financing our Highway 43 improvements, which we have a plan or close to a plan for already. One might be what Jules mentioned earlier about specifically allowing us to increase the tolling or at least take a piece of the tolling that allows us to pay for our own mitigation projects. But we should have some very specific asks that have ideally quantitative dollar amounts to them that they have to respond to. And the more we can have our own legislative delegation backing us on that, the better. So I think we have some homework to do before we schedule such a meeting.
And Jerry, you think our staff has the bandwidth to work on that now to get, I mean, I'm sure, Lance, you have some of that information already together.
Yeah, I do. I think this is one of the goals that the council identified in our recent goal setting session. I think it was 1 or 1A. So I need to move it to the top.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. I love, I guess just my gut reaction is I love all the suggestions, but to me, there's sort of the other devil's advocate side says, well, if we ask them to help pay for this and that means we've kind of acquiesced to tolling. And I here's what you can do. If you do this for us, you can buy us off is kind of what kind of went through my brain. And I don't know if that's a correct assumption, but
Well, they can do it regardless.
I understand that, yeah.
So
Trying to make
it's
it-
not as much buying them off, but at least
but
mitigating
we're going to try to get
effects.
something from them. If
That's
you
right.
want this, we're going to extract a heavy toll.
And if nothing less, it's good public relations for them, right? Like they've made this investment in our local community.
But yeah, what I worry about too is they'll say, well, let us get the tolling in and then we'll do the, I think if we're doing,
No, there's a sequence of events, and
they
that's
do
not the
this
sequence.
first and then we might, So, okay.
Well, that doesn't even mention the fact that because of this construction project, we are having to replace our drinking water line.
Yes. I
To
was
the
gonna-
tune of $14 million.
Yes, and are they
which-
phoning up any money to help you with that?
Not 1 cent.
No.
Yeah, see, to me, that's just wrong in so many ways.
Well, you're now a member of South Fork Water Board, and Mr. Relier and I, we have had that discussion before, so
Yeah.
we understand where it's
Oh,
going.
yes, I've been totally aware of that, and I just think it's
Egregious.
yes, I would like to use a stronger word, but let's use egregious. Yes, it's definitely egregious.
I just wanted to say, I appreciate Frank's perspective earlier, and I do think that this is going to be so harmful that it'd be worth having our city lawyers explore all potential options, because it's just coming so fast, and I don't think we've been shown enough diversion mitigation or any diversion mitigation litigation can sometimes force parties to come to the table
sooner
and
than they might
negotiate
otherwise, yes.
on things and respond with concrete things. But on a topic of the I-205 project, I just wanted to say, for the record, that I was surprised when I realized recently that construction is supposed to be starting next month. I saw,
we
and I don't think
understand.
our communities are necessarily aware of that, and I'm not sure what immediately is going to be happening with any potential closures, but I hope we're kept informed, because that's, a month away is stunning, but I'm glad the project is moving forward. It's the seismic bridge.
Well, they have some money. They got some money from the legislature, so they're not completely broke, and it's not 100% dependent upon tolling. They have some money, but they don't have enough money. Yes, Mary?
I was just going to say, for anyone who might be interested in that, the immediate near-term work, they're calling it the in-water work, is that what they call it? There was a presentation yesterday that I found not frustrating. So it was an ODOT presentation that was informative and not frustrating. It had some excellent images on what their plans are, and I believe it was recorded, and it was sponsored by the Chambers of Commerce for West Linn and Oregon City. So I'm not sure where that presentation would be housed. Does anyone happen to know where a person could look that up? But I had to leave the meeting early, so I missed out on the part but they were recording it, so.
Okay.
hopefully
That's
we can
great
find that.
information.
We could get a hold of our
Post it
Yeah.
somewhere.
chambers.
Can we
and
put a
see.
link to that on our website, our websites? Yeah, for the public.
That's great.
Well, once again, I would say that the meeting I sat in, they said the only financial vehicle to support either bonding or borrowing was tolling. That's it. And this other thing I heard is they're already going out for, looking for a $120 million grant for phase 2 of the project. So time marches on. We need to make sure it doesn't march over us.
Yeah. So, Mr. Conkle, are you at liberty to discuss the bridge kickoff?
Yeah, my understanding is that ODOT is looking at doing a groundbreaking, I think in the next couple of weeks, over on the parking lot next to John Storm Park on the Oregon City side, so right underneath the I-205 bridge. Sounds like ODOT has taken all of those planning, event planning responsibilities, so I would expect that each of you will probably receive an invite in the near future.
I'm wearing my no toll
T-shirt. I was thinking the same thing. We need T-shirts made.
Matching shirts.
Matching shirts.
Matching shirts.
We can use the funds we get from that for our legal fees.
So more information to come.
Okay, we'll have to discuss that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Does anybody have any good of the order that they would like to discuss with the respective electeds?
I would just like to say thank you for hosting us today, and thank you for suggesting this meeting. I think it's been really helpful. Thank you to your staff for setting it up and operating everything, and they even bought us a nice dinner beforehand of pizza, and we had good laughs and nice chats, so thank you very much. We appreciate all you do, and we're happy to work in partnership with you.
You know, I'd say the same. I'm not a big fan of meetings. I'm one that says that the human race has never achieved its full potential because of meetings. But I really feel that this was a very productive meeting, and I'm pleased to sit up here and work with everyone. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, for coming, and you know, as I said in the beginning, that we need to continue to forge relationships because we are so intertwined with one another. And not just because you were called West Oregon City at one time, although I do like to bring that up. I do like to bring that up every so often.
Rub it in.
But, you know, you came into your own as Linn City and then West Linn, so.
They're going to ban you from shopping across the river.
No,
How many times do you come over there?
they like me too much at Market of Choice. I now just became good buddies with the new store manager. So we appreciate your working together with us, and let's continue to do this. We've got issues that are beneficial and also concerning to both of our jurisdictions that we need to present a united front. And I'm just so delighted that we were able to be here in person. And Todd, you're going to be here the next time, right? Anyway, and thank you to Dana and John for coming online, and Lance, thank you for being here as well, and Tony and Jerry, thank you for making this happen, and Jacob for putting it all together and making this happen with Lisa's help. So we are adjourned.
Thank you.